Hi there, I'm Juliana Carroll, and this is my sister and partner in Coffee and Tech, Lisa Jackson. Together, we are your hosts here at the Coffee Tech Talk Show, exploring anything and everything to do with work orchestration and automation. We're here to be the catalyst for industry change by reaching beyond soulless solutions, listening, and learning from all our collective experiences. Most importantly, we're building a community of people who can share, learn, and grow together.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Coffee Tech Talk Show. I'm Lee, and this is my sister Jay, and we are back to talk to you about work. So last session, we covered the second part of our foundational series, and we talked about sequence matters and the workflow orchestration. This session, we're going to be talking about people, process, and tools. But before we get into all the good stuff and the details, I wanted to ask my sister, how's work? Anything exciting happened this week?
Let me share a true story, right? It's not all, you can do many things without the expensive tools. Mm-hmm. It just depends on what you're trying to do. So, true story, I was in a conference and a little bit like this, except face-to-face. And then afterwards, the conference organizer took us to dinner and someone was sitting next to me. And he said, hey, can you come and take a look at our processes? Tell us, what we're doing and how it can be improved. So I said, sure. He said, but we're well into this work where we're thinking about managed services because we can't figure this out ourselves. We were just going to outsource the whole entire workflow to a third party. But we would really like to change our processes ourselves. We think we can do it. Can you tell us how? So I went in there and they had the tools. It just wasn't configured properly, right? So because what they were trying to do involved multiple teams. So when only one team is involved in the design, the other teams aren't considered. And because the other teams doesn't feel like this is their workflow, they don't always share the details of the work, right? So being a workflow optimization consultant is almost like being a journalist. You have to do a lot of research. So you go to all these different people and you actually sit there and say, when you want to do something like this, what's the first thing that you do? What's the second thing that you do? What did you bring to your first activity? What information did you gather, right? And then what is it that you need to start your activity? So long story short, I did that. And what I learned was they didn't document the processes or properly. They didn't get all the information of what people actually do and prepare with to start a particular activity or task. And then they also didn't do the transitions properly, and the sequence wasn't optimal, right? The tool exists, it just wasn't configured properly. So, and then they had pieces of different tools, but they were not integrated. And then getting information from one tool to the other requires two human beings to schedule a meeting and compare Excel worksheets, right? When it wasn't actually necessary because you can actually make the tools talk together programmatically. And then at the end of it, you can then have all this end-to-end data for intelligence, for continuous service improvement, because the tools are now integrated properly in the data flow. So I was invited to deliver my results with the CIO of the company. And as I was leaving, I saw two groups of people waiting in the waiting room. Later on, I found out that they were on the nth hour of doing the managed services and choosing between vendor one and vendor two. But then decided through the results that was provided that they could do it themselves, and they did it within 18 months. A lot less than the 3 years that another vendor was telling them that it would take to do. So
nice. Very cool. That's a great story. Congratulations.
you may have the tools already. You just may need the glue to stitch the tools together.
Yeah, but you know, the common mistake that you just said, or a big mistake, is people are always not documenting properly. That I mean, that sounds simple enough, but it's a lot of the problem for a lot of companies, I think.
Well, a lot of times people who are used to doing, you know, their tasks and activities, they take what they do for granted. And they don't realize that as soon as, you know, they walked in the door, they already had their headset in, right? And so they say, okay, you just take the order and then you type it in here. And then they forget that in order for you to communicate to the barista or to people in the back to see if the, you know, if the ingredients are there, you need that headset, right? So it's little things like that that will crash and grind work and workflow to a halt, right?
Okay. So, which is why everybody that's listening should tell everyone else that they need to listen, because she is definitely an expert in this. We love to hear success stories. So thank you.
Let's talk about people, the very first and most important component of how does work happen. Okay. Most people would want to know, what is it that am I supposed to do, right? So we talked before about the sequences of sequence matters and the sequence of activities in order to make your favorite chai latte. So if you see here on the image, the very first column on the left says activity, and then it says responsibility, accountability, consulted, and informed. This is a way for us to show who's supposed to do what work and what their roles are for each one of the tasks. So responsible means that these are the people that do the work, responsible of doing the work. So there could be multiple people doing the work, right? It's a team effort, let's say. Accountable is the one person, the one accountable person that is in charge to make sure that the work gets done and it gets done properly. So a single person can be both the responsible one and the accountable one, right? But there cannot be more than one accountable person. Otherwise, I'll say, well, it was Lisa's job. And you'll say, no, that was your job. So one accountable person, as we call it in the business, one to choke, right? So, and then another role is the consultant role. So these people are the ones that gives information and gives you knowledge about, you know, how the work should get done or whether or not it even should get done. And then there are the people that gets informed. So let's walk through this a little bit, right? So the very first task is order, right? So who's responsible for ordering the chai latte? That would be you. Yeah, you're doing the work. You're doing the order. And then you are accountable to make sure that you give the order correctly. Make sense?
Okay, yep.
Right.
Got it.
So who is responsible to receive the order from the customer? The cashier. The cashier. Right, the order taker, cashier. Now, who do you think is accountable to make sure that the order is correct? Some people would say,
well, I see the same person pictured, so that means that would be me.
Yes, that would be you, because if, you know, because you want to make sure that the person that you're giving the order to receive it correctly. Now, from a coffee shop perspective, they may say, okay, the order taker is responsible to make sure that that the order is received correctly, right? But the one who would know whether that order is correct or not is actually the customer, the ones that she would be the ultimate accountable, you know, to say, yes, this order is correct, right? Because you're the one that wanted it, right? Okay. So if you look way to the right, you can see that the barista is informed, right?
Hmm.
So she has nothing to do
Yes.
with the receiving the order, but she probably would want to know so she can get a little bit of a view. Maybe she's doing somebody else's order right now, but if she get a view into what's
Yeah.
incoming, then she can either say, hey, I can start preparing or whatever. So from a request payment perspective, the order taker and who is also the cashier is both responsible and accountable. And then from a process payment, as we said before, the actor or the role doesn't necessarily have to be a human. In this case, the system is responsible of making sure the payment is correct, right, or is being done. But then the order taker or the cashier is still responsible, and accountable to make sure that is done correctly. And then the customer is told, the barista is told, so everybody's informed that everything is a go to make the coffee.
Okay.
So to make the order, the barista is both responsible and accountable to make sure that the order is produced correctly, and then consult the order taker, right? And then who's responsible to give the order to the customer? Probably the order taker, because then the barista would hand her the coffee, or your chai latte, and then and she's both accountable and responsible to make sure that you get it. And then you are now responsible and accountable to sign the payment and receive the order and walk away happy, hopefully.
When I'm looking at this, it would be the account executive would send it down to the account manager, which from there it goes to the operations director, from there it goes to the production manager, from there it goes to the foreman, from there it goes to the build team, right? So this order has to go from top down. So the way that we avoid that misunderstanding internally, we would have what we call a production meeting. So once the project is sold, everybody that's responsible for their department would sit in on this meeting, and the account executive would basically go over everything that was on the signed estimate, we call it, and everybody would know what needs to be done and what's expected out of them.
So this is where you assign roles and responsibilities. So if you were planning a workflow orchestration, a repeatable process, this is something that you would build. We call this a RACI matrix. So you would you would build a RACI matrix. You say the account executive is responsible and accountable of getting the order from the customer. And then, your production manager is responsible for receiving the order, but you're still accountable to make sure that the order is received properly. And then it moves on, and then it gets taken out of your hands. So, and then on and on until it comes back to you as a finished product, and then you become accountable of reviewing the product and receiving the order before you hand it to the customer. So in this case, you're kind of like the order taker. Right.
Well, because that, is different roles that we have to take on, because, we order it, we make sure everybody gets information, production makes the order, and then at the end, I make sure the client's happy and receive the money.
And you want to do this process over and over and over and over and over again, so that things go smoothly, right? So we call this a repeatable process. So it is a lot less chaotic when everybody know what they're supposed to do at the sequence of when they're supposed to do it, right? So as you are building your workflow, reviewing your workflow, build a RACI, stop the chaos.
Yes, I like that.
So this is the people aspects of it. There's many other aspects of people's roles and responsibility, but this is basically the core framework, the core principle. In the world of workflow orchestration and automation, it's called a RACI matrix.
Okay, I like that.
So that concludes part 1 of our foundational series 3 on people. The next one, part 2 of our foundational series 3,
will be process and tools.
So this was really good, Jay. Definitely things that we can relate in our industry. And I hope everyone out there took a lot of notes. And again, if you want the presentations, you can definitely email us at connect@coffeetechtalk.show, and Jay will be glad to email that to you again for coffee or maybe more. In the meantime, make sure you follow us on all of our social media sites at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube at Coffee Tech Talk. So until then, anything else, Jay?
Nope. Be safe out there.
Awesome. Work hard to get lucky. Until next time.